Karen couldn't wait to call animal control. That darn cat had been driving her crazy for weeks, shredding her furniture, knocking over her plants, and keeping her up all hours of the night with its incessant meowing. But little did she know, this was no ordinary house cat. In fact, it was a highly trained therapy animal that provided essential emotional support to its owner, Alex. And when the authorities showed up to take the cat away, all hell was about to break loose. Alex rushed home from work, panic flooding through his body. The frantic call from his neighbor had sent his heart racing. Karen called animal control on Buttons. They're on their way to take him. Buttons was no ordinary pet. He was Alex's lifeline, a certified therapy animal that helped manage his debilitating anxiety and depression. The mere thought of losing him was unbearable. Bursting through the door, Alex found Buttons cowering in the corner, his eyes wide with fear. "It's okay, buddy, I'm here," Alex cooed, scooping the trembling cat into his arms. Just then, there was a pounding at the door. "Open up. This is animal control." Alex's stomach nodded as he reluctantly opened the door to face the uniformed officers. "Please, you can't take him. Buttons is my therapy animal. He's essential for my mental health." The officers exchanged a skeptical glance. "We received a complaint about a nuisance cat. Unless you can provide the proper documentation, we have no choice but to impound the animal." "But I need him," Alex pleaded, his voice cracking. "He helps me get through each day. I'll lose my job, my home, everything if you take him away." One of the officers stepped forward, her expression hardening. "Sir, I understand this is upsetting, but we have to follow protocol. Now please hand over the cat, or we'll have to place you under arrest for interfering with an investigation." Alex's vision blurred with tears as he reluctantly passed Buttons to the officers. The cat let out a pitiful meow, his yellow eyes imploring Alex for help. "I'm so sorry, buddy," Alex choked out. "I promised I'll get you back, no matter what it takes." As the animal control van pulled away, Alex collapsed to his knees, overcome with anguish. Just then, his neighbor Karen emerged from her house, a smug grin plastered across her face. "Looks like you learned your lesson about letting that demon cat run wild," she sneered. "Maybe now you'll keep it under control." Alex's grief instantly morphed into white-hot rage. "You have no idea what you've done," he spat. "Buttons is a certified therapy animal. You just destroyed my entire life." Karen's smile faltered, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her features. "Therapy animal, but he's just a nuisance cat. He's the only thing that keeps me from spiraling into a deep depression." Alex interrupted, his voice rising. "Without him, I could lose my job, my home, maybe even my life." Karen's face paled as the gravity of her actions set in. Alex turned and stormed back into his apartment, slamming the door behind him. He collapsed onto the couch, burying his face in his hands as the sobs overtook him. How was he going to get Buttons back? And more importantly, how would he survive without him? The next morning, Alex awoke with a renewed sense of determination. He couldn't give up, not when Buttons' well-being and his own mental health hung in the balance. Throwing on some clothes, he rushed out the door and headed straight for the local animal shelter. The burly attendant behind the counter eyed him skeptically. "How can I help you, sir?" "I need to get my therapy cat back," Alex said, trying to keep his voice steady. "His name is Buttons, and he was just taken by animal control yesterday." The attendant let out a sigh. "Look, I understand you're upset, but we get cases like this all the time. Unless you can provide the proper paperwork proving this is a legitimate therapy animal, there's nothing I can do." Alex's heart sank. "But I need him. He's the only thing that keeps me from spiraling into a deep depression. Without him, I could lose everything. My job, my home, maybe even my life." The attendant's expression softened slightly. "I wish I could help, but my hands are tied. You'll need to talk to the animal control officers who brought him in. They should be able to guide you through the process of getting him back. Thanking the attendant, Alex turned and hurried out the door, his mind racing. He had to find a way to get Buttons back, no matter what it took. As he approached his apartment, he spotted Karen tending to her garden, a smug grin on her face. Rage boiled within him, and before he could stop himself, he was storming over to her. "This is all your fault," he shouted, causing Karen to jump in surprise. "Because of your selfish actions, I could lose everything." Karen's eyes widened in alarm. "Whoa, what are you talking about?" she stammered. "Buttons is a certified therapy animal." Alex shot back. "He's the only thing that keeps me from falling into a deep depression. And now, because of you, he's been taken away." Karen's face paled as the realization dawned on her. I didn't know," she stammered. "I just thought he was a nuisance cat." "Well, now you know," Alex spat. "And unless I can get him back, I could lose my job, my home, maybe even my life." With that, he turned and stormed back to his apartment, leaving a stunned and guilt-ridden Karen in his wake. As he paced the floor, his mind raced with 1,000 different scenarios, each one more dire than the last. He had to get Buttons back, no matter what it took. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized that the road ahead was going to be an uphill battle. After all, how was he going to convince the authorities that a simple house cat was actually a highly trained therapy animal? The stakes had never been higher, and the clock was ticking. Alex knew that he had to act fast if he had any hope of saving his beloved Buttons and his own sanity. Alex spent the next several hours poring over legal documents, desperately searching for a way to prove that Buttons was a legitimate therapy animal. He knew that time was of the essence, and every minute that passed was another minute that his beloved cat was trapped in the animal shelter. As he scanned through page after page of regulations and certifications, his head began to spin. The process was far more complicated than he had anticipated, and he couldn't help but feel overwhelmed by the sheer amount of red tape he would have to navigate. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he stumbled upon a glimmer of hope. There, buried in a stack of paperwork, was a form that outlined the specific requirements for having a therapy animal recognized by the state. If he could just gather the necessary documentation and submit it to the proper authorities, there was a chance he could get Buttons back. Filled with renewed determination, Alex quickly set to work. He gathered the contact information for his therapist, who had been the one to initially recommend that he get a therapy animal. He then drafted a detailed letter explaining Buttons' crucial role in his mental health treatment and the devastating impact that his removal would have on his well-being. With shaking hands, Alex typed out the letter, pausing every few moments to wipe away the tears that threatened to spill down his cheeks. The thought of losing Buttons was almost too much to bear, and he knew that he had to succeed in this endeavor, no matter the cost. Once the letter was finished, Alex printed it out and carefully placed it in a folder, along with copies of his therapy records and the certification paperwork for Buttons. Taking a deep breath, he grabbed his car keys and headed out the door, determined to make his case to the animal control officers. As he pulled up to the shelter, his heart was pounding in his chest. He had never felt so nervous in his life, but he knew that he had to be strong for Buttons' sake. Steeling himself, he marched through the doors and approached the front desk, his folder clutched tightly in his hands. "I need to speak to the officers who took my therapy cat," he said, trying to keep his voice from trembling. The attendant eyed him with a mixture of sympathy and skepticism. "I'm sorry, sir, but we've already had a few people come in claiming their animals are therapy pets. Unless you have the proper documentation, there's not much I can do." Alex's heart sank, but he refused to give up. "Please, you have to listen to me," he pleaded. "Buttons is my lifeline. Without him, I'll lose everything. My job, my home, even my life. I have all the paperwork right here. I just need to speak to the officers who took him." The attendant hesitated, then nodded slowly. "All right, I'll see what I can do," Wait here. As Alex waited anxiously, his mind raced with 1,000 different scenarios. What if the officers didn't believe him? What if they refused to give Buttons back, no matter what he said? The very thought of it made his stomach twist with dread. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the attendant returned, a grim expression on her face. The officers are on their way. They want to speak with you personally. Alex swallowed hard, his hands trembling. This was it, his last chance to get Buttons back. He couldn't afford to fail, not when so much was at stake. As the officers approached, Alex steeled himself for the confrontation, determined to do whatever it took to bring his beloved cat home. The two animal control officers strode towards Alex, their expressions grim. He could feel his heart pounding in his chest as he gripped the folder of documents tightly, desperately hoping they would be enough to convince the officers to return Buttons. So, you claim this cat is a therapy animal? The older officer said, arching an eyebrow. We've had a few people try that excuse before, and it doesn't usually hold up. Alex took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. Yes, that's right. Buttons is a certified therapy cat, and he's essential for my mental health. I have all the paperwork here to prove it. The younger officer, a stern-faced woman, crossed her arms over her chest. Well, let's see it then. And it better be legit, or we're not going to have any choice but to keep the cat in impound. Hands trembling, Alex opened the folder and began shuffling through the documents. He pulled out the letter from his therapist, the certification paperwork for Buttons, and a copy of his own mental health records. Here, you can see it all right here, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. The two officers exchanged a skeptical glance as they began poring over the documents. Alex held his breath, his stomach twisting with anxiety. After what felt like an eternity, the older officer finally looked up, his expression unreadable. This all seems to be in order, he said slowly. Buttons here is a certified therapy animal, and you've got the proper paperwork to prove it. Alex felt a surge of relief wash over him, but he forced himself to remain calm. So, does that mean you'll release him to me? He asked, trying to keep the desperation out of his voice. The younger officer frowned. Well, not so fast. We still need to verify that this cat is actually the one that was impounded yesterday. And there's the matter of the fine for the nuisance complaint that was filed. Alex's heart sank. Of course, there would be more hoops to jump through. Please, I'll do whatever it takes, he pleaded. I can't live without Buttons. He's the only thing that keeps me from spiraling into a deep depression. The older officer held up a hand. We understand, son. But the law is the law, and we have to follow proper procedures. If everything checks out, we'll release Buttons to you, but you'll need to pay the fine first. Alex nodded, his mind racing. Okay, I can do that. Just please, let me have him back. I don't know what I'll do without him. The officers exchanged another look, and then the younger one nodded. All right, we'll go check on the cat. Wait here. As the officers disappeared through a door, Alex let out a shaky breath. He couldn't believe it. He was so close to getting Buttons back. But a part of him still couldn't shake the feeling that something could go wrong. Pacing the floor, he replayed the conversation in his mind, searching for any possible loophole or technicality that the officers could use to keep Buttons away from him. The thought of losing his beloved cat was simply too much to bear. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the officers emerged, Buttons cradled in the younger officer's arms. Alex felt his heart skip a beat as he rushed towards them, his eyes brimming with tears of joy. Buttons, he cried, gently taking the cat from the officer's grasp. Buttons let out a soft meow, nuzzling against Alex's chest, and Alex felt a wave of overwhelming relief wash over him. Thank you so much, he said, his voice trembling. I don't know what I would have done without him. The older officer cleared his throat. Just remember, the fine has to be paid, and you'll need to keep a closer eye on this one from now on. We won't be so lenient next time." Alex nodded quickly, his mind already racing with plans to ensure that Buttons never ended up in this situation again. As he cradled his beloved cat close, you felt a surge of gratitude and determination. He would do whatever it took to keep Buttons safe and by his side, no matter what. As Alex hurried home with Buttons cradled in his arms, a wave of relief and gratitude washed over him. He couldn't believe that he had managed to get his beloved therapy cat back, and he knew he owed it all to the persistence and determination he had shown in the face of adversity. But even as he reveled in his victory, a nagging sense of unease began to creep into the back of his mind. After all, the ordeal was far from over. He still had to deal with a hefty fine imposed by the animal control officers, and he knew that he couldn't let his guard down, lest he risk Buttons being taken away from him again. As he approached his apartment, he spotted Karen, the neighbor who had originally called animal control, tending to her garden. A surge of anger and indignation rose within him, and he couldn't help but confront her. "This is all your fault, you know," he said, his voice trembling with emotion. "Because of your selfish actions, I've had to jump through hoops just to get my therapy cat back." Karen looked up, her expression a mix of surprise and guilt. "I didn't know he was a therapy animal," she stammered. "I just thought he was a nuisance cat, and I wanted to get him out of the neighborhood." "Well, now you know." Alex shot back, his grip on Buttons tightening protectively. "And if anything like this ever happens again, I'll make sure you pay the price." Karen's face paled, and she took a step back, her eyes wide with fear. I'm sorry," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't mean to cause you so much trouble." But Alex was having none of it. "Sorry doesn't cut it," he spat. "You've put my entire life in jeopardy, and I'll never forgive you for that." With that, he turned and stormed back to his apartment, Buttons still cradled securely in his arms. As he stepped through the door, he let out a shaky breath, his heart still pounding in his chest. He couldn't believe the ordeal he had just been through, and he knew that the worst was yet to come. The fine imposed by the animal control officers was going to be a significant financial burden, and he had no idea how he was going to come up with the money. Carefully setting Buttons down on the couch, Alex began to pace the room, his mind racing with 1,000 different scenarios. What if he couldn't pay the fine? Would the officers take Buttons away again? And what about his job? Would he be able to keep it if he was constantly worrying about the welfare of his therapy cat? The more he thought about it, the more overwhelmed he felt. He knew that he needed to take action, but the mere thought of navigating the bureaucratic maze of paperwork and regulations was enough to make his head spin. Suddenly, a thought struck him. Maybe there was a way to get the fine waived, or at least reduced, if he could prove that Buttons was a legitimate therapy animal. After all, the officers had acknowledged the validity of his documentation, so surely there had to be some way to use that to his advantage. With renewed determination, Alex began to scour the internet, searching for any information that could help him in his quest to keep Buttons by his side. He knew that the road ahead was going to be a long and difficult one, but he was more than willing to fight for the one thing that kept him grounded and sane. He would do whatever it took to ensure that Buttons never ended up in the animal control's clutches again, even if it meant taking on the entire system to do it. Alex spent the next several days tirelessly researching ways to get the fine for Buttons' impoundment waived. He scoured the internet, making endless phone calls to various government agencies and legal experts, determined to find a loophole or exception that would work in his favor. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he stumbled upon a glimmer of hope. Buried deep in the city's animal control regulations, he discovered a provision that allowed for therapy animals to be exempt from certain fees and fines, provided the owner could furnish the proper documentation. With renewed vigor, Alex gathered all the paperwork he had presented to the animal control officers, the letter from his therapist, Buttons' certification, and his own mental health records. He then placed a call to the local animal control office, his heart pounding in his chest. "Hello, this is Alex," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. I'm calling about the fine I was issued for the impoundment of my therapy cat, Buttons. I have all the necessary documentation to prove his status, and I'm hoping you can waive the fee." There was a brief pause on the other end of the line, and then the officer responded, his tone slightly skeptical. "Well, Mr. Alex, I'll have to review the paperwork again. But if everything checks out, we may be able to waive the fine. Could you come down to the office and speak with us in person?" Alex let out a sigh of relief. "Absolutely. I'll be there as soon as I can. Thank you so much for your time." Hurrying out the door, Alex practically ran to the animal control office, his mind racing with 1,000 different scenarios. What if they still refused to waive the fine? What if there was some other technicality he had overlooked? The very thought of it made his stomach twist with anxiety. As he approached the front desk, the same burly attendant from his previous visit greeted him. "Ah, Mr. Alex, the officers are expecting you. Follow me, please." Alex trailed behind the attendant, his palms sweating. He was led to a small conference room, where the 2 animal control officers from his previous encounter were waiting. "Mr. Alex, thanks for coming in," the older officer said, gesturing to a chair. "We've had a chance to review your documentation, and it seems everything is in order." Alex felt a wave of relief wash over him, but he didn't dare let his guard down just yet. "So, does that mean you'll waive the fine?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The younger officer nodded. "Yes, that's correct. Given the circumstances and the fact that Buttons is a certified therapy animal, we're waiving the impoundment fee." Alex could hardly believe his ears. Thank you so much," he exclaimed, his voice cracking with emotion. "You have no idea what this means to me." The older officer raised a hand, his expression softening. "We understand, son. We're just glad we could help get your therapy animal back where he belongs." As Alex shook the officer's hands and headed back to his apartment, a sense of renewed hope filled his heart. He had faced a daunting challenge and emerged victorious, and he knew that he owed it all to his unwavering determination and the power of Button's therapeutic presence in his life. But even as he celebrated his triumph, a nagging feeling of unease crept into the back of his mind. He knew that the ordeal was far from over, and that he would need to be ever vigilant in protecting Buttons from any future threats. Still, as he opened the door to his apartment and was greeted by Buttons' familiar purr, he couldn't help but feel a deep sense of gratitude and relief. He had his beloved therapy cat back, and he was determined to do whatever it took to keep it that way. In the days that followed, Alex found himself constantly on edge, hyper-vigilant about Button's safety and well-being. He knew that his neighbor Karen had been the one to call animal control in the first place, and he couldn't shake the feeling that she might try something like that again. Whenever he saw Karen outside, tending to her meticulously manicured garden, he would protectively clutch Buttons close, his eyes narrowed with suspicion. The mere thought of going through that ordeal again was enough to send his anxiety skyrocketing. One evening, as Alex was preparing dinner, he heard a soft knock at the door. Immediately, his heart began to race, and he felt a surge of panic coursing through his veins. What if it was the animal control officers, come to take Buttons away again? Cautiously, he peered through the peephole, only to find Karen standing on his doorstep, her expression contrite. Steeling himself, he opened the door, his grip on Buttons tightening. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice terse. Karen shifted uncomfortably, her gaze downcast. I wanted to apologize," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I had no idea that Buttons was a therapy animal, and I feel terrible about what I did." Alex's eyes narrowed. "You should feel terrible," he spat. "Because of your callous actions, I had to jump through hoops just to get my cat back, and the stress of it all nearly sent me spiraling into a deep depression." Karen winced, her face flushing with shame. "I'm so sorry, Alex. I truly had no idea how important Buttons was to you. I was just annoyed by the noise and the mess, and I wasn't thinking straight. Alex let out a humorless laugh. That's no excuse. You could have ruined my life, and for what? A little bit of peace and quiet. Karen opened her mouth to speak, but Alex held up a hand, silencing her. Save it. I don't want to hear your excuses. The only thing I care about is making sure that Buttons is never taken from me again. Karen nodded, her eyes filled with remorse. I understand. And I want you to know that I'll never call animal control on you again. I'll keep my distance and stay out of your business from now on. Alex regarded her skeptically, his grip on Buttons never wavering. That's fine by me. But if you so much as look at Buttons the wrong way, I'll make sure you regret it. With that, he slammed the door in Karen's face, his heart pounding in his chest. He couldn't believe the nerve of her, showing up on his doorstep and expecting him to just forgive and forget. As he carried Buttons over to the couch, he felt a surge of protectiveness wash over him. He would never let anything like that happen again, no matter what it took. Buttons was his lifeline, his constant companion, and he would do whatever it took to keep him safe. Settling onto the couch, Alex pulled Buttons close, burying his face in the soft fur. I'll never let them take you away from me again, buddy, he whispered. I promise. In that moment, he knew that he would have to be vigilant, always on the lookout for any potential threats to Buttons' safety. But he was more than willing to do whatever it took to ensure that his beloved therapy cat remained by his side, no matter what. In the weeks that followed, Alex's life returned to a semblance of normalcy, with Buttons by his side every step of the way. The trauma of the animal control incident had left a lasting impact, however, and Alex found himself constantly on edge, hypervigilant about Buttons' safety and well-being. Whenever he saw Karen in the neighborhood, he would instinctively tighten his grip on Buttons. His eyes narrowed with suspicion. The mere thought of going through that ordeal again was enough to send his anxiety spiraling. But despite his lingering fears, he knew that he had to move forward, for Buttons' sake. One day, as Alex was taking Buttons for a walk around the block, he noticed a flyer posted on a nearby telephone pole. It was an advertisement for a local animal therapy support group, and it piqued his interest immediately. Scanning the information, he learned that the group provided a safe and supportive community for individuals with therapy animals, offering resources, training, and even legal assistance in navigating the complex web of regulations and bureaucracy. Without hesitation, Alex tore the flyer from the pole and hurried home, his mind racing with possibilities. Maybe this was the answer he had been searching for. A way to not only protect Buttons, but also to ensure that he would never have to go through such a traumatic experience again. Calling the number on the flyer, Alex arranged to meet with the group's organizer the following week. As he sat across the table from the kind-faced woman, he poured out his story, his voice trembling with emotion. I can't go through that again, he said, his grip on Buttons tightening. I need to know that Buttons will be safe, no matter what. The organizer listened intently, her expression filled with empathy. I understand, Alex. That's exactly what this group is here for, to support people like you and to help ensure that your therapy animals are protected. She then proceeded to outline the various resources and services the group offered, from legal advocacy to specialized training for therapy animals. Alex listened, his heart swelling with hope and relief. Sign me up, he said, without hesitation. I'll do whatever it takes to keep Buttons safe. Over the next several months, Alex became an active member of the Therapy Animal Support Group, attending regular meetings and workshops. He learned invaluable techniques for managing Buttons' behavior, as well as strategies for navigating the complex legal landscape surrounding therapy animals. Most importantly, he found a community of like-minded individuals who understood the profound impact that their therapy animals had on their lives. The sense of camaraderie and support was, in many ways, just as crucial as Buttons' own therapeutic presence. As Alex's confidence grew, so too did his determination to ensure that no one would ever try to take Buttons away from him again. He became a vocal advocate for therapy animal rights, speaking out against discriminatory policies and lobbying for greater legal protections. And when Karen, his once antagonistic neighbor, approached him months later, apologizing once more and asking if there was anything she could do to make amends, Alex didn't hesitate. He extended his hand in forgiveness, knowing that holding onto that anger and resentment would only serve to weigh him down. "It's okay, Karen," he said, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Buttons and I are doing just fine, and we're going to keep it that way, no matter what." With that, he turned and headed back to his apartment, Buttons purring contentedly at his side. He knew that the road ahead might not be an easy one, but with Buttons by his side and the support of his newfound community, he was more than ready to face whatever challenges came his way.